All right, it's time for another post-game Pints podcast, and it's a 5-minute version. 5 minutes to wrap up the Montreal Canadiens season because they lost in the Stanley Cup final in 5 games to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mitch, can we wrap this all up in 5 minutes? Start that clock.
I mean, I guess we're only going to be talking about Game 5 because if you want to wrap up an entire postseason, I think it's going to take a full podcast, and maybe we'll get to that at some point. But yeah, Sean, the Tampa Bay Lightning are the Stanley Cup champions, and I think they are well-deserving Stanley Cup champions. They are the best team, and what an accomplishment for them going back to back.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, and you think about it, they did it twice in like 9 months. And you kind of had the short-ended season, and then the 2014 playoff. They were able to get through that, and then you also had the the shortened 56 game. You do it within your division, only divisional teams in the first 2 rounds. That was probably the toughest first 2 rounds than any of the other teams. No, not to say anything against what all the other teams had to go through, and then they had to go through an Islander team that they had to beat year prior, and then an upstart Canadiens team, and the Canadiens just kind of ran out of gas. But congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mitch, when you look at Game 5 and evaluate Game 5 in this 5-minute post-game Pints podcast, was that it? Did the Canadiens just run out of gas?
I think to a certain extent, yes. I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but you look at a lot of players on the Canadiens, I think their tanks were on empty. We knew about the injuries to Weber and Petrie, but speculating about Toffoli and Gallagher with the way they looked, especially in the Stanley Cup final, and we get confirmation that Gallagher had a groin injury and other injuries, and Toffoli also had a groin injury. He looked like he could barely move out there, so we get to that explanation, and they gave everything they had, Sean, but just not a lot left in the tank. It was a long road to get here, and that's why it's so hard to win this trophy. It is hard to win the 16 games required to lift that Stanley Cup over your head, and I think it was a great learning experience for a lot of the younger players on the Canadiens, and even some of the guys that have been around for quite some time but haven't won yet. I think they know now that even though they came so close this time around, it wasn't enough. And if they get another chance, they're going to have to dig even deeper than they did this year.
All right. It's a question that we asked on our first post-game show, but on this 5-minute, I'm going to ask you quickly. The Habs MVPs, of course, it's Carey Price. I'm going to throw Shea Weber, Suzuki, and Danault on that list too throughout the playoffs, not in just this game, but if we're wrapping up the playoffs, the Canadiens were going to have an MVP. I think those were the 4 front runners, at least for me.
Yeah, for me, the MVPs outside of Price, you have to look at the 2 centers at the top of the Canadiens lineup. Suzuki in the offensive role, but being a really smart player all around, and Danault for shutting down. Because I'm looking at the playoffs as a whole, right?
Yeah.
And I know it's easy to think about the Cup final, but it was a long road to get here. And shutting down Matthews and Marner, and shutting down Wheeler and Connor, and shutting down Pacioretty and Stone. So much great work done by Phil Danault. For the Canadiens, and some great moments for Suzuki. And then I'll also add Cole Caulfield on the list, Sean, of potential MVPs, because it was a real coming out party for Cole Caulfield, who now has probably some big expectations going into what's going to be his rookie season next year. But he definitely has to be on that list.
Yeah, I don't mind your list at all. And you mentioned all those Jets players they shut down. We have to remember Mark Scheifele is still suspended. Just throwing that out there. Did they get the Conn Smythe right at the end? Did they get the Conn Smythe winner right?
I don't know. It's not my pick, but I'm not going to say they got it wrong. It's just not the guy I would have voted for. I saw the voting breakdown was actually pretty decisive. It wasn't unanimous, but Kucherov only got 3 of the first place votes. My first place vote probably would have went to Kucherov. I think that's a harder player to replace in this playoff run. I don't know if some of the voters was their way of protesting Kucherov being in the Lightning lineup. But listen, man, Vasilevsky is the best goalie in the league, and he played a heck of a playoff.
All right, we only got about 30 seconds here left on the 5 minutes post-game Pints podcast, wrapping up the Habs loss in the Stanley Cup final. Oh, by the way, just so you know, these little 5-minute post games, we're going to do it for other sporting events too. So stay tuned. Click subscribe, like, comment, let us know. We really appreciate all those comments that you have had throughout. But Mitch, very quickly, the players got asked this. I'm asking you, did you have fun?
Sean, I honestly had a blast. This has to be right up there, covering different sporting events and covering the Canadiens. First time I ever got to cover a Stanley Cup final. The ride has been terrific. And, I just want to thank everybody that participated and listened to us, listened to the Post Game Pints podcast, or on any of the platforms or areas where you can find us. So thank you. You guys, for the most part, are just amazing. And we appreciate you so much.
I had fun too. That's it for us. Stay tuned. We got more full episodes coming up, courtesy of Post Game Pints. I know we did a lot of the 5-minute post games, but that was kind of time consuming because of the amount of work that we've been putting in. But it's coming even throughout the summer. And stay tuned. Launch party. It's been a year, but we're going to have it, the launch party, and we're going to have it quite soon. And I can't wait to see everybody when we finally do that for Post Game Pints. Now it's time to crack open a LaBrosse beer.